Hello there, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ashley. Today we're going to be talking about common romance tropes. I'm definitely a mood reader and I definitely am loving romance books right now. And we've been going hardcore on romance books for the last 3 or 4 months. Anyway, so I decided to break it down by tropes. Now, tropes are not a bad thing in books. Tropes become cliches when the reader can predict and expects to know what happens in the novel, and it pulls them out of the novel. It breaks the reading experience because you're like, oh, I can perfectly predict where this is going. But tropes give you kind of an expectation. For example, when you pick up a romance novel, one trope that you could be looking for is enemies to lovers. Or you could be looking at one of them has amnesia, or the other doesn't fully understand the full scope of their relationship. And I, being an aspiring writer, am really curious about what type of tropes I like as a reader, and potentially which ones I would like to try my hand at. So let's get started. I have 12 of the most common romance tropes. Obviously, there are thousands and thousands of ways to break this out. So I'm gonna miss some or oversimplify them, and that's kind of the point. I'm gonna start with the ones that I love the most and move progressively through the ones that I'm like, meh, it's okay, and actively to the ones that I hate. And I'm gonna try and figure out why it is that I love them and why it is that I hate them. So the first one is close proximity or forced proximity. So think Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. This is where you have two people who are somewhat passive aggressive towards each other. They wouldn't normally get to know each other and get to know each other well, but they're forced into some sort of confined space together, whether they're trapped in a car, trapped in a library, they go on a vacation together, they are the bridesmaid and the bridegroom at a wedding, just something that forces them to be together, where they slowly start to realize, oh, you're not the person I thought you were, and I'm starting to really like you. All right, so the defining trope moment for this one is the moment when the couple realizes they have to be together. That is the moment that everybody is waiting for and watching for, and it makes it feel satisfying. And in terms of reader expectations, the reader is expecting that they're going to resist what is pushing them together as hard as they can. And what is pushing them together needs to feel real in order for this trope to be pulled off correctly. I will link the website that I got most of this information from down below, because she did a beautiful job at breaking down what makes all of these tropes work. And she's a writer herself, so if you're interested in any of her books, you should definitely go check her out. So next we have the fake relationship. This is the fake dating. I love this. I have yet to read a fake dating relationship story and hate it. And maybe I'm just new to this trope and I haven't read enough of it yet. But how this trope works is that you have a couple who are spending a lot of time together and they're pretending that they're in a relationship, whether that be to full social media, to make somebody jealous, to make an ex jealous. It's just very convenient for them to be together, and then they slowly start to realize that they actually have feelings for each other. Some examples of this are To All the Boys I've Loved Before. Another good one is Majesty by Catherine McGee, which is the second book in the American Royals. Also the first book a little bit too. Yeah, those are like the top 2 on the top of my list. So one of the best moments in this trope is when this couple has their very first kiss in front of an audience and both of them realize that it wasn't fake, that it felt real, it felt authentic, and then they start to uncover their feelings and true emotions for themselves. In terms of reader expectations and what makes this trope work, the reader has to believe that their reasons for staying together in this fake relationship are real and believable. They have to feel authentic. They both have to be gaining something substantial from being in this relationship, and they both have to believe that there are really good reasons for why this relationship would not actually work. Okay, next we have enemies to lovers. I love this when it's done well, and I despise this when it's done poorly. So think People We Meet on Vacation by Erin Henry, or These Broken Stars, or Pride and Prejudice. That's a really big one. When you have, and the idea is that you have these two people who get on the wrong side of each other and despise each other, and then slowly become, as they get to know each other, realize they're not the person you thought they were and that you actually do love them. This is different from the fake dating in the sense that they're not also trying to pull off a relationship. This is they despise each other and they tell all of their friends that they despise each other. So some of the defining moments, or one of the defining moments in this trope, is when the first character realizes there's far more to the other person than they ever could have possibly imagined. Think Pride and Prejudice, when Lizzie is walking through Pemberley and she's like, wow, of all this I could have been mistress, when she's realizing just how different Darcy is from what she's imagined in her head. Now, in order to pull this trope off believably and correctly, the reasons that these two people in this relationship hate each other have to be believable. And it can't just be a misunderstanding of the facts, in the sense that, like, they first believe gossip and now they don't believe the gossip. Perhaps it is more inclined to the idea that they don't have all of the facts, or they both need to grow up a little bit and move past what was keeping them apart. So what makes this satisfying is when both of these characters grow. They're out here and they grow in towards each other. That makes this satisfying. When not done well, it feels like the character all of a sudden has a 360-degree turn right in the middle of the novel, and they go from being like, I hate you, to I love you. And it feels disingenuous and not authentic, which makes it very hard to pull this off. Next, we have the marriage of convenience, which I tend to love this one too. The defining moment for this trope is the wedding and the impending sense of doom that you feel about being attached in this relationship. One of the ways that you make this believable is by making sure that both couples are pulling something vital out of this. Like, they have to have this, such as blackmail, or there's an inheritance that they have to get. Just something very believable that you wouldn't just walk away from and be like, no way, I don't think so. And this can be a really beautiful trope, in the sense that not only are they figuring out how to do a marriage, they're also figuring out how to do a partnership and a relationship. And they're doing all of that at once, which I think is lovely. I've come across a couple of these that I haven't loved, but for the most part, I love this trope. The next, we have some sort of person in power who is, you either know that they're the person in power, or it's all of a sudden revealed that they're a secret billionaire. So we have the sheik, we have the sultan, we have celebrities, aristocrats, social media influencers, any of these people with power who fall in love with someone common. These are all people who are very hesitant to come into a loving relationship because it could easily backfire on them. So they're very hesitant to come into a loving relationship, and they have a lot to lose from it, and also a lot of reasons to avoid it. The expectation for this trope is that it's going to be a story of luxury, it's going to be an escapist story, and it's also going to be a story where the stakes get higher and higher and higher as you go on. The defining trope moment is the moment when you enter the world of the rich and famous. So think Cinderella for this one, because you have the prince who you meet the prince. And a lot of, I think, Disney ones would probably fall into this category, but you have the prince who needs to marry for an heir, and Cinderella's just like, yeah, I mean, sure. And then the stakes get raised and she gets locked in a room, and we're not quite certain if she's actually going to be able to get out. I like this trope. I don't think I've read a whole ton of it, and I would like to read more, because I think, I don't know, in terms of like an escape, I think this would be really fun romances to read. And I definitely think I could be more on board with this. I just am not as familiar with this trope as the others. The next one is a forbidden romance, being in love with the best friend's brother or sister. It's the forbidden fruit trope. The conflict arises in this trope because the other person feels off limits for some reason. And the defining trope moment is when you give in for the first time to that person, and then the guilt that you feel afterward for having given in. This is a trope that forces two people to deny their attraction to each other, because of their fear of upsetting the status quo or the norm. And that can be so very angsty. This one, I haven't read a whole ton of books like this, and I feel meh about it. I don't know that, like, if I knew this was the trope going into it, I don't know that I would pick it up on purpose, but if it was a sideways, smaller trope, I wouldn't be opposed to that. But I don't know that I would pick this up on purpose. And I definitely don't know that I would write this one, mostly because I don't know. I need more exposure to this one, I think. The next one is friends to lovers, and this is where we have two friends who all of a sudden see each other differently and realize that there might be something more there. And that's actually the defining trope moment, is when you have these people who see each other differently for the first time. This is fun because these characters already have chemistry between each other, so you can kind of jump into the middle where it's a little bit of a forbidden romance or an unaware romance, so that can be fun to play with. The danger in this one, though, is that there needs to be a really good reason for why these characters have not already gotten together yet. Like, why have they stayed apart so long, resisting this attention, and what has suddenly changed that now brings them together romantically? I don't know that I can think of a ton of these off the top of my head, and I feel rather indifferent, so I think I probably need to seek this one out and maybe read some more intentionally for this one. I want to say off the top of my head that I don't love this, but I also didn't think I liked enemies to lovers until I got a little bit more exposure. So we see. I could see myself trying to write something like this, but I definitely want to get more familiar with the trope, more the expectations for this trope first. Next we have love triangles, and you either love these or you hate these. I tend to hate these a lot unless they're pulled off really well. Think Hunger Games, think Twilight. The defining moment is when you realize that you have two of these people who are both seeking your attention and they're fighting each other. And perhaps another trope moment is when those two people that are fighting over you have a chat and a talk with you or with each other about you. That's definitely been a moment that I've noticed a lot in the love triangle trope. This, when done well, can increase the drama and increase the tension, and when done poorly it comes across as drama for drama's sake and may make people put it down. And by people I mean me, or be really annoyed by it. I hate love triangles that are the main plot. If they are a side plot and not the main focus of the story, I am more inclined to be okay with that. But again, maybe I need to read more of these, but I don't want to. This is not something I love. I hate this. I really don't like this one. Which that's what we're moving into. Is a lot of ones that I am not as much a fan of. So the next one is a workplace or a job-based romance, and this is very similar to the proximity one in the sense that you have two people who are forced to work on a project, and then they start to realize that there's a lot of chemistry going on there. This one's ironic because if I had to label any of these for how my romance worked out, my own personal love life, this is the one that fell into. And the defining moment for this one is that moment when you're working as a team and you work really well together as a team and you want to continue working really well together as a team. This can also incorporate a little bit of the enemies to lovers, and oftentimes the job holds a lot of interest. So it's something like a first responder or doctor or a rancher. The job is part of the hook. Next we have weddings, and this is just part of romance all the time. Basically the idea that there is a wedding that takes place somewhere in the novel, and that's kind of like the big focus of everything, and that is the defining moment of the trope. And this can go kind of any way you want it to. This could be the bride is running away from the wedding as it's starting. This could be that the groom is falling in love with the photographer and you catch them making out. They're like, literally you can do anything provided that there's a wedding as the backdrop. That's kind of where that's headed. I don't know that I've read a ton of this. I feel like this is very common in rom-coms, and I don't hate it. I don't love it. I don't know that I would do this one. I need more exposure. I need more exposure. That's the main theme going on here. Next we have the two that I hate the most. So the first one is Amnesia and the Case of Mistaken Identity. An example of this would be While You Were Sleeping, the movie with Sandra Bullock. And this is the story where one half of the people in the relationship knows more about what's going on than the other person does, which creates kind of a power imbalance because one of you has more information than the other. because there's a power imbalance and probably some lies going on, that can make this uncomfortable and a little bit sticky, and it creates a lot of room for morally gray actions, I guess, which can be hard to forgive depending on how extreme you take this. The defining moment in this trope is when it's revealed what one person knows. Both of them for the first time they know exactly what the other person is, what they're doing. They see everything clearly for the first time. This usually is followed by a breakup, I feel like. And I don't know that I've read a whole lot of these that are pulled off really well. But also, I don't think, I think I tell myself that I hate this, and so I don't pick anything up that I know is obviously going to be like this. So I would read one or two more of these on purpose, but I would research a lot and make sure that a lot of people really liked it before I picked it up, because I'm really hesitant on it. And our last one, which is one that I will try to avoid at all costs, is second chance romances. Think the first book of Illuminae, think The Notebook by Nicholas Sparks. This is where you've had people who have been in a romance in the past and they broke up, or for some reason their relationship wasn't working, didn't work, and so now they are coming back together. They've both grown, they see each other differently, and they're going to try and give this relationship a second chance. The defining trope moment in this one is that first moment after they see each other and it's been so long and they realize they still have feelings for each other. In terms of making this story work really well, readers expect a really good reason for the breakup and for why this relationship wasn't working. And it needs to make sense why the characters are hesitant to move on with this relationship. And the story also needs to show that is the main conflict, as well as we need to see how the characters have changed and grown and why a relationship now works when it didn't before. Meaning, a simple misunderstanding or he said, she said gossip is not going to cut it, because it's not going to feel like a strong enough reason. I will probably never pick up a book if I know it's a second chance romance. I hate these. I think Illuminae is the only one that I've ever seen done well. I despised The Notebook. And I don't know, I wouldn't do research on this one and pick one up. I would probably pick up anything else. And this one I would leave that book alone. I would leave him alone. So in terms of romances that I am most interested in writing myself, it's probably the forced proximity, enemies to lovers, and a fake relationship. The fake dating or the marriage of convenience. Those are my 4 probably favorite tropes. And those are the 4 that I maybe would want to try writing myself. So I need to do more research. I feel like I've been reading romance a lot, but I've never actively read romance with a writer's brain to try and figure out how I can imitate that, and why some romances are satisfying and why some are not, and why some work and why some don't. So that's the next step in this writing journey that I'm on. Anyway, so I hope you've enjoyed this. I will talk with you all in the comments down below and in another video. Bye!